Good afternoon to you. Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com here. Wednesday now, September the 6th, 2023. And we need to talk about Lee, the pattern. That's what's going to dictate this. I know that's the same every case, but sometimes you know they're going to hit land somewhere, like Idalia last week, right? Lee, not so sure about it. There's definitely still a lot of uncertainty. We're going to talk about that. First, I'm going to start off, though, showing you where we are on the ACE count, the Accumulated Cyclone Energy count, because it's going to just keep going up and up and up. This forecast of a busy season looks like it is definitely coming to pass. And then real quick, just to update you on my father's situation. First of all, thank you all very much for your condolences and your well wishes, the emails, the post on YouTube, the comments there, and even a few folks over on Twitter. Yes, it's always Twitter to me. He's doing okay, relatively speaking, over at the hospital still. Family's here, so forth and so on. And that's pretty much all I'll say about it for right now, but I definitely do appreciate everybody reaching out. It means an awful lot to me and the family and to my dad, who got me into all of this. So let's talk about the weather, shall we? First, the ACE, the Accumulated Cyclone Energy. Where are we? We are at 57, let's just call it 58. And the normal to date is 49. The ACE is Accumulated Cyclone Energy. It's kind of like wondering in a basketball game, well, who scored the highest points, or in individual cases, the total amount of points that the team scored gives you the ACE score for the team, if basketball teams had ACE. You understand that? So the individual storms that we've had this year, we've had 12 that had names. One of them was the unnamed storm. We've had 45 named storm days, way above the normal for this time of year. We're right where we should be for hurricanes, slightly less than normal hurricane days, but this is going to quickly catch up. We are ahead of the curve a little bit on major hurricanes. That's also going to change. We're slightly under major hurricane days. That's getting ready to change. And this score, again, really going to go up over the next several days, because the tropics are going to stay very, very busy. We've got Lee out here. We have another system that's trying to get its act together, Invest Area 96L. And then way up here in the northeast Atlantic, yes, this used to be Franklin. Remember Franklin that did all this over here and wound up over here? Roughly like that track anyway. Yeah, that could try to regenerate some as it meanders around in the northeast Atlantic. And then looking out over the next 7 days, nothing new added to the tropical weather outlook yet. But there is lots more energy sitting over Africa that's going to come out as we reach the peak of hurricane season here in the next several days, and then it'll hold for probably the next couple of weeks. In the eastern Pacific, though, I don't want to ignore Hova over here. My goodness, look at that pinhole eye. That is incredible. It's wonderful to see that it's well offshore. Look at that massive feeder band coming in from the intertropical convergence zone. This is probably on its way to becoming a Category 5 at some point. Small overall, especially the central dense overcast, the CDO, that little thing right there in the middle, that round ball. And then the center of it with that eye, the warming eye. Wow, just a classic wound up hurricane in the East Pac. And then over here, of course, we do have Lee itself trying to wind up. This is going to be a large hurricane, and this whole mess of energy is going to head in this direction over the next few days. And you folks here in the Virgin Islands, maybe Puerto Rico, I want to put you on notice. I think you're going to feel some direct impacts from this by way of these big feeder bands coming in. And just look at Hova in the Pacific. It's a little bit different the way Lee is going to be coming through, but I think the size of it is going to mean that you feel maybe even a period of tropical storm force winds and gusts. I mean, yeah, I think that's possible, and it won't surprise me at all, unless this gains more latitude than we're thinking right now and seeing in some of the guidance. I believe there will be some direct impacts. I say direct, I mean not just swells, but actual feeder bands coming through those islands there, maybe dumping some heavy rains, periods of gusty winds. So just look for that in the next few days. We might see tropical storm watches or something like that go up. That's my opinion, not the National Hurricane Center's forecast, but I'm sure in the wording that they say, that the Northeast Caribbean should monitor the progress of Lee. I haven't read it myself, because usually I just analyze this stuff looking at the maps and the charts. Once in a while, I look at the actual text products, but I'm more of a technical side of things now that I read things over by looking at the graphics and the modeling data and so forth. But once in a while, those nuggets of information most definitely are in the public advisory packages. All right, so just keep an eye on that if you're down here. I would say it's more the extreme northeast Caribbean here towards Puerto Rico as Lee comes by. You get one of these feeder bands that comes up across that area as it goes by. Yeah, it could be pretty. You can get some inclement weather in a short amount of time. And Lee is not going to be moving particularly fast. We'll talk about that more in a few minutes. This is 96L over here. There's the leftovers of Franklin, and that's still the leftover swirl from Idalia, believe it or not. Boy, the Atlantic, look at just, I talked about this yesterday. Some of these are low level, some of these are mid to upper level. Just lots and lots of activity. That's a mid-level cyclone coming through the nation's midsection. Finally, it's going to break that heat wave a little bit, at least, starting in the Great Lakes region. But yeah, the tropics are very busy. So I want to just go over the two models, the two main global models that we pay the most attention to. There are so many different models out there, and a lot of people talk about the GFS and the Euro and so forth and so on. And just kind of looking at the two and trying to discern what the pattern might be, with the caveat that we know beyond 7 days, I mean, honestly, beyond 3 days, things can get pretty chaotic. 7 days plus? Are you kidding me? It is just beyond chaotic sometimes in terms of the scenarios that can play out, because the atmosphere is literally very fluid, very dynamic, and it's hard to figure out. I know we want concrete answers, but we just don't have them. I mean, look, if we could predict these things within 100 miles, 10 plus days out, you know what we could do in terms of preparation and mitigation? That would be amazing, but we're not there yet. Good thing is you're paying attention, hopefully to the right sources. I've seen a few people talking about some of these folks on other social media posting ridiculous stuff. I mean, just ignore that. It's entertainment value. Might not even be worth your time. So between myself, other reliable sources out there, remember, I might not have said this year, but I've said it in the past. I don't know everything, and I sure hope I don't come across as pretending that I know everything, and I invite you to accept all reliable sources as we try to figure this out. So where's our starting point? What do we got? Well, we're going to use red here to highlight things. That is the low-level vorticity signature. I like this part of the atmosphere. From the GFS here, 850 millibars. It's about 5,000 feet up. And let's just move this out to 1 week. Shall we? We shall. So there's 6, and then there's day 7, a week out. Couple things to note. Now we're going to look at the different layers of the atmosphere. We've got this over here that tries to develop. Another impulse here. So the tropics staying busy, and then there's even more energy over Africa. But there's Lee taking up a big area of real estate over the southwest Atlantic. Definitely going to be intense, no doubt about it. The upper air pattern, very, 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 very favorable. In fact, we can look at that. At the upper levels, it is sitting right under this anticyclone aloft. You got the outflow channel there. It is, and then this streak up here that's going to help evacuate the air as it comes in. And look at the circulation all the way up to the 200 millibar level. It is cyclonic, and then right above it, the air evacuating out in a clockwise fashion very efficiently into this upper level low. Yes, it is going to be an intense hurricane, and it'll generate a lot of waves. We're going to talk about that more. I'm going to start pinpointing that because we want to make sure people stay safe. So the lower levels all the way up to the upper levels, very, very favorable for this upcoming hurricane. Now, what about at 500 millibars, roughly the steering layer? It's a deep layer system, so we're about halfway up. This is very important because we're talking about pieces of the atmosphere here that steer these systems, and we can look at these using height lines, and it's just thicknesses. The thicknesses of the atmosphere, like big old balloons inflating and deflating and moving around. There's Lee and the 500 millibar height anomaly, in other words, the departures from the meteorological norm, if you will. And this is a little bit higher pressure overall showing up in the analysis here, the forecast. This is a little bit lower. This is your trough. Now, let's just take a look real quick at the full run, because I want to show you something. Let's just watch what happens. The full run, Lee gets swept out, and you see the progression of everything, and that's the key term here. How progressive is the pattern? So let's go back to 168 hours. That's a week out. The key, one of the keys, but I see the big key being how progressive, in other words, moving along, is all the traffic of the northern latitudes, the mid-latitude entities, right? High pressure, the troughs, the ridges. How's everything moving along? Is it just going along, and this blue area right over here is able to just come on through, pick up Lee, and take it out? That's a progressive pattern where everything just goes along. Or do things start getting sort of tripped up in the pattern? See that little thing I did there? Tripped up in the pattern so that something slows down to create a change. And we've seen that in the last day or so, what looked like a fairly straightforward, everything's moving along, Lee's coming along at the right time, catches that bus, off it goes. Now we're starting to see that that might not be the case, but it could swing back to where, oh, it is in fact the case, because it's more than 7 days out. So we don't know. So we're going to just look at what we do know, and that is what the model output is showing us to about a week's time. All right? So the GFS parks this anomalously low area of low heights, as we call it, in the atmosphere, over the Great Lakes, down through just west of the Ohio Valley, extending southwestward. It's not sitting over the East Coast, and it certainly isn't offshore, where this would just be a lock to get captured and it's out. So this is interesting to see what happens. And it's also going to be interesting to see if this sort of pinches off, leaves a little piece behind, and the trough lifts out, allowing this red to build back in, trapping Lee and then sending it closer to the coast. That's a scenario that we're starting to see might try to evolve. This is the GFS, all right? Now let's look at the Euro. Now, since I'm putting this together between the 2 and 3 o'clock hour, we don't have the full 3-hour frames that Dr. Levi Cowan has put up on his site. So these are just 24-hour increments, nevertheless, still going to be very helpful because we do have it out to 7 and even 8 days. So let's see what the Euro is showing, all right? So we're going to start off, same kind of thing. Low levels of the atmosphere, 850 millibars. This is Lee right here. We'll put an L on it for Lee. Keep your eyes on that as I move this through. So this would be Thursday morning, Friday, let's just call it 2 days, 3 days, 4, 5, 6, 7. All right, now we understand everything else. It looks very powerful, so forth and so on. What does the 500 millibar height anomaly look like compared to the GFS? Let's get rid of that L over there, shall we? Maybe. All right, come on, let's go away. Go away, thank you. So compared to the GFS, which has more of a height anomaly, there's not as much on the Euro, and so there's more ridging overall. And Lee is a little bit farther south, right? This is less, and this looks like it's going to pinch off and go away. And let's just look out one more frame since it's there to day 8. And you see it starts to lift. That's what I was wondering would happen. This lifts out, this stays behind, and this tries to head on out. The ridge starts to build back in, and this might try to get back closer. That is what this is all going to come down to. Maybe. It's so far out, there could be other things that we don't even see yet. You understand? This is math and physics and programming, and we're asking to have solid solutions that just aren't available quite yet. And so we're going to have to just watch, because first we got to deal with the Caribbean. I think there will be some direct impacts there. I already mentioned that. We know this is going to generate some powerful swells. So we've got 2 areas we need to watch that we know are going to get impacts. All right? Beyond that, it's literally just a stay tuned kind of thing. These outlandish, plant your flag, as I say, statements that it's definitely going to miss everybody, or if it's definitely going to hit somebody, nobody knows. And anybody that tells you they absolutely know, they could end up being right, but that's because they were very lucky. They didn't know, they didn't have something that absolutely told them, like solving a mathematical equation, that 4 plus 4 is in fact 8. Okay, this is not a solvable problem. It is chaos in the atmosphere, and we have to just see what happens. And I just remember, to remind you, just a week ago when Idalia made landfall, trying to pinpoint, is it going to be St. Mark's? I talked about this yesterday. Is it going to be Cedar Key, Keaton Beach, Tampa? Just narrowing it down. And even a year ago there with Ian, that was a day out. We're still thinking, like, is it going to be Tampa Bay, Fort Myers, Naples, Sarasota? And we're talking just tens of miles in 24 hours. Now we're trying to figure out what's going to happen with what's going to be a giant hurricane whose outflow will pump heat into the atmosphere, maybe helping to inflate the ridge. There's some debate about that in meteorology. Is that really a thing? It is going to evacuate a lot of heat out of itself. So it's very complex. And anybody that says, I have the answer, yeah, maybe just, yeah, okay, we'll see. I mean, maybe they're right, but maybe they're just very, very lucky. And if they are, ask them to start picking some Powerball numbers for you. Probably not quite the same odds, but you can't make these definitive statements this far out. And I certainly wouldn't. That's why I'm saying, hey, look, let's just watch and see what happens together, because we know that it's going to be there. And, you know, with something out there this powerful, you definitely want to keep an eye on it. All right? Let's get this done and online for you as always. Thank you so much for tuning in to me. And again, thank you for all the kind words about my father. And again, he really appreciates that. I will keep you posted. I just think that's fair. Not going to leave you hanging as to what happens. But again, thank you so much for that. From all of us here at Hurricane Track, I am Mark Sudduth. I will be back with more for you tomorrow.